March 5th, 2021. So the YouTube thought police are out and went ahead and deleted my video about the right messaging and social pressures to get people to take vaccines. And they said, you can't share any information that's contrary to the overall consensus of the World Health Organization and local health authorities. Well, isn't that interesting? Because they've been wrong before. So we should be able to share all information and opinions. No. You can't have your own opinion. You definitely can't share your opinion or your experience of vaccination. Even though anecdotal stories are just a reflection of reality that goes beyond what the manipulated scientific consensus is designed to display, right? To get behaviors, the desired behaviors of compliance and doing as you're told to go through. So, bad boy, David, you shared your own opinions, and you can't do that here in this world. Anyway, okay, so we can only share what the World Health Organization says. Got it. Let's do it. Now, back in December of 2019, the World Health Organization held a global vaccine safety summit where this group, the Global Advisory Committee on Vaccine Safety, gathered together for several days and discussed vaccine safety, which that discussion, while they did touch on some issues about vaccine safety, really came down to vaccine messaging, right? Well, there's issues with vaccines, but what we need to do and really focus on is how to improve our vaccine messaging and build vaccine confidence and build trust in what we're doing regardless of the outcome. That's the priority. So let's hear it from them. Let's hear what they have to say. Now, you can go here. This is the World Health Organization WHO.int, and you can Google Global Vaccine Safety Summit and go right to this page. And they have every session in here to watch, and they're all a couple hours long. It's a very in-depth summit. And it's good that they came together to discuss these issues. And it's good that it's public information that you can go in and watch. Now, of course, the purpose of this was to come together and present information for vaccine stakeholders, right? To ensure that the program lives on and that it's profitable. So anyway, let's jump in and hear what they have to talk about when it comes to vaccine confidence in combating vaccine hesitancy.
This is no brand news to you. You've seen a lot of news about the growing questioning environment, but what I'm trying to look at here is where does safety come up in the broader look at where the confidence problem is. And again, safety rises to the top. This was in the U.S. I've done a lot in Europe. This was our first. We developed a vaccine confidence index, which we've been running for 5 years. We have under review now an analysis of 250,000 people in 148 countries. We have all their background demographics and to look at what are the trends and patterns, but this is one of the first ones we did, 67 countries in 2016, and I was actually surprised at Europe being so acutely skeptical when it came to safety. I knew other countries were having some issues, but it was quite acute in Europe. When we try to disaggregate that by different kinds of reasons, safety is the biggest issue. Safety is the biggest issue. Fear of side effects, low sense of risk. The other thing that's a trend and an issue is not just confidence in providers, but confidence of healthcare providers. We have a very wobbly health professional frontline that is starting to question vaccines and the safety of vaccines. That's a huge problem because to this day, any study I've seen, and we're constantly looking on any studies in this space, still the most trusted person on any study I've seen globally is the healthcare provider. And if we lose that, we're in trouble. And we haven't lost it yet, but we've talked about it earlier. Some of the challenges are when the frontline professionals are starting to question, or they don't feel like they have enough confidence about the safety to stand up to it to the person asking them the questions. I mean, most medical school curriculums, even nursing curriculums, I mean, in medical school, you're lucky if you have a half day on vaccines, never mind keeping up to date with all this. One of the things that we need to think about as we generate more safety data, how can we get it into the hands that the people that need to represent and speak for it, because they're not getting enough of it. The other...
Okay, do you hear what she just said? So, we have all these huge safety concerns that are coming up that have never been here before. And it's not just the general public, it's actually frontline physicians that are starting to question vaccine safety. And we can't have that. So we're not going to really focus on improving the safety of vaccines. We need to really focus on our messaging and building trust in what we're doing, okay? So that they believe it's in the best interest of everybody. And, we can't blame the physicians for not understanding this because, throughout all of medical school, they're lucky if they get a half day at best of education on vaccines. So, of course, they don't know anything about this. And, of course, some of them may start questioning safety. So instead of educating them better, we just need to improve our messaging and build more trust in us so that they feel confident in just moving forward and doing whatever we tell them to do. Holy crap. And then you guys really should go watch this. She goes on and talks about how vaccine confidence continues to dip and they have all these issues going on around the world. And she starts sharing areas where they've had huge problems with vaccine confidence because of massive injuries or vaccine rollouts that were just a disaster, like the dengue vaccine that was just a horrible disaster. And so they had to do all this PR to especially with the politicians. She talks about how this gets very political and they have to really focus on government agencies and rebuilding that trust so that they'll just do what we tell them to do. Remember, this is the World Health Organization saying this, not me. Go watch it. So let's jump a little bit forward because this one talk goes on for hours. Well, over an hour on this one. And okay, so now she's talking about how, this is such a slow player and it doesn't let me go full screen. Yeah, so the dengue vax, what a freaking nightmare that was. And then because of that, how vaccine confidence has taken this massive dip. So in 2015, there's this huge confidence among everybody, right? This is the Philippines specifically, but then in 2018, it's really dropped down. Vaccine confidence is really beginning to drop in all these areas. So let me jump forward a little bit to, this is going on in Africa and in China. We're going to go right here.
10 years ago, even 5, but particularly 10 or 20. They're demanding much more engagement, many more answers, and we should think of every document that we're producing here as having a public face, because they're going to find it and we need to put it in a language or at least have some summary. I was talking with Bruce Gillen about this. They will look for information, and we need to put it in a way that when they get access to any documents, whether it's blueprint or safety, that somehow there's some uber abstract or title or why this matters to you. We analyzed the different, we don't have to get in the detail on it, but we were looking at what were the responses and the rebuttals back and forth about these trials. Why did we care? Because each time we do this, we're using it as case studies to help other people in setting up trials and getting in trust building very early. And
Again, this is acknowledging that vaccine safety is a concern, but nowhere do they talk about addressing or fixing the problems with the vaccine, but how we can focus on the messaging. The messaging. It can't seed doubt.
as Narendra called it, the trust deficit. So one of the challenges we have is I spend a lot of time talking, particularly in the last 6 months, with tech companies, Facebook, WhatsApp, Pulsar, Twitter, Instagram, WeChat, W.H.O. They have a lot of fingers pointing at them to fix the misinformation problem. But it's not so simple. One, the biggest problem is a lot of it's not misinformation.
Very important to understand. This is a complex issue because we're getting called out, or people are calling out social media, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, whatever, saying you need to bring off all this vaccine misinformation. Well, it's not that easy because most of it's not misinformation. So what can we do without it becoming a censorship thing by just pulling it down? So pay attention to what they're saying.
It's asking questions. The people who are questioning, particularly the ones who are more motivated to disrupt than necessarily asking genuine questions.
And that's a lie. We're not trying to disrupt. We're trying to create awareness for people to make truly informed decisions. That's not purposeful disruption. That's trying to help people understand that there is real risk here and that you need to take that into account when you're making your decision about each and every vaccine.
Are putting questions on billboards. They're also they're not just on social media. That is one piece of a much longer chain of information. This is in Italy posing risks. And questions, if you knew the ingredients in a vaccine, would you risk it?
Isn't that important to know? What you're injecting into your body, especially neurotoxins, and the fact that the reaction in the body is thousands times stronger intramuscularly than ingestion, it's a big deal.
If an apple contained aluminum, mercury, and formaldehyde, would you eat it? There's nothing illegal about these questions, but they seed doubt. This is where, and then I like the Tin Man saying, whoa, I heard there's aluminum in there.
Ha ha ha, that's so funny. We're not Tin Man. We're not made of aluminum. Aluminum has no biological function at all. So it's a valid question for us to say, whoa, 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 doesn't that contain aluminum? It's not a freaking joke. It's a very important topic. So anyway, they say, what they're saying is true, but the problem is it seeds doubt, and we can't have that.
But the focus on ingredients now too. But the challenge for some of these tech companies and even for others who are trying to clean up the misinformation, our problem is, as we've heard in the last 48 hours, that there's not anything 100%. And what actually can legally, without creating a censorship thing, can we absolutely say this is misinformation? Because we have a lot of ambiguity in the safety field, and we have to come to terms with that. So we have to think about it differently than deleting misinformation, but building trust so people are willing to put up with a certain amount of risk because they believe in it enough. They believe in our work, what we're doing, and that it's in their interest.
Right? So we shouldn't delete true statements because that would be censorship. What we need to do is continue fine-tuning the messaging and the propaganda to build trust so that people are willing to put up with the risk because they believe enough in what we're doing that they'll take that risk with their lives and the children's lives and go on and get the vaccine because we said so. And we can't just delete it and say that's misinformation because there's so much ambiguity in the safety space. Nothing's 100%, right? So when they're claiming safe and effective, well, define safe. Only 1,200 people died? That's safe? I mean, come on.
Another new issue that's coming up, the issue's not new, but
Oh my gosh, just stop muting it. Okay. This is also really, really weird. And you really need to understand their thinking here when they're discussing this. So, vaccine injury and the fact that it's accelerating like this and more people, I wouldn't say it's accelerating. It's becoming more known, right? There's more awareness of vaccine injury. Why? Because more and more people are speaking out and sharing their stories. And so people are starting to recognize that vaccine injury is not rare. It's actually quite common. We just didn't recognize it at a societal level. So they twist this and say, well, it's not because people are sharing their anecdotal story and showing that it's actually common. No, it's because some people shared their story and created a immunological stress in their mind so that when they go to get the vaccine, their emotions take over and they generate, or it's a psychological reaction that they have paralysis or a seizure or an anaphylactic reaction because it was all in their head. This is so insane.
Recognition of it is newer. And that's when the adverse events are not really about the vaccine, but the vaccination experience.
The vaccine didn't cause the adverse event. The experience did. What?
We've heard this morning about the Japan situation. We've had a series of what have been assessed as, in the absence of other organic links, psychosomatic reactions to vaccines as what it's been characterized by adverse event. This was the situation. These are some of the girls in Japan whose mothers have court cases about claiming that they were damaged by HPV vaccines. This is in Denmark. They're all lined up. This was a group of girls and went into a TV documentary, including one of the Japanese scientists interviewed, saying we've got the same problem. This was another issue. This was in Ireland. Similar girls lining up in front of a health official, and I heard the live video, and she's saying, "How dare you? How dare you recommend this vaccine? How dare you look at all of us sitting here and say this is a good thing?" It was a pretty difficult exchange there. This is Colombia. 600 girls across multiple schools in a district in Colombia had the same symptoms that these other places. Now, I just want to show you what's going on also in the power of YouTube to create mimic reactions. These girls are watching each other's YouTube. The Colombia one I picked up. We have a global social media monitoring system for 10 years. And I look at it every morning. I saw a YouTube come up on the screen in Colombia. It was Japanese girls with an English subtitle and a Spanish voiceover. I thought, oh boy, we're in trouble. But I you don't know when a signal is going to go big or not. And I thought, I'm going to wait before I contact Patrick and tell him what I saw this time. But it was part of what was beginning to happen in these situations.
You don't know when a signal is going to go big or not. And so what's happening with all these girls is actually somewhat of a common reaction. We're having all kinds of passing out and seizures, paralysis, just destroying their lives, right? And this is going across the globe through the rollout of the HPV vaccine. But it's not the vaccine, it was the vaccine experience. And it's because these girls in Japan and the doctors shared this online and it went onto YouTube, and then it got subtitled in Spanish and then was dubbed in English or vice versa, and it spread like this, creating mass psychogenic illness. Okay? So it put this fear in their head of getting the vaccine, and because that was seeded and there, they're just assuming that all 600 of those girls saw that video, right? What about babies that have never been seeded with this fear, who are dying of sudden infant death syndrome and getting epilepsy and having type 1 diabetes? They're so full of crap, and they just make this shit up to justify it. This is all my opinion, YouTube, and I'm entitled to it. I'm allowing everybody to hear the words directly from the World Health Organization, and they can come to their own conclusions regarding what is being shared.
I've been developing a collaboration with King's College Institute of Psychiatry, and they're some of the top specialists in psychosomatic illness. And also, we've been looking historically back, and we're seeing a real change in the nature of these reactions because of social media. And Robert Bartholomew is a key person. We've been witnessing a milestone in the history of MPI where the primary agent of spread will be the internet and social media networks. This is a new problem. This is not something that we have any previous characterization of, and it's a risk factor.
So it's not because we're vaccinating more than we ever have in history. It's because we now have the internet and people see other people's vaccine reactions and then make up in their mind their own. Duh. Don't you see it, people? It's called immunization stress-related responses. Listen, that's not what they first started. They first started with the term immunization anxiety-related reaction, but that pointed the finger too closely at immunizations, so we had to reword it. Listen.
The reality is, though, and I have to say to the credit of GACS, this has come up, and in 2015, it was recognized that this phenomena was becoming more of a concern. There were more cases being presented to GACS, had a systematic review done in 2017 on anxiety-related reactions to immunization. Since then, that's been reviewed, and the title has been evolved, and I'm very happy to see that we're about to soon have guidance on immunization stress-related responses, which first it was anxiety, then it was immunization triggered stress, and that kind of implicated immunization too much in there, and then became immunization stress-related reactions.
Immunization triggered stress. Oh, no. That points the finger a little too much at the vaccine, so we need to move it to immunization stress-related response. Okay, that's better. So it's all psychosomatic. Man, we've had this serious ramp up in adverse reactions, and so I'm so grateful that the Global Advisory Committee on Vaccine Safety came together and really analyzed it, and we came to the conclusion that it's all psychosomatic. It's just all in their head. And so, we found the right term, immunization stress-related responses. Even if it was immunization-triggered stress, where's that stress coming from? Well, the vaccine actually does affect your mental health because it's affecting your neurology. Those adjuvants, especially the one in the HPV vaccine, which I think was amorphous aluminum hydroxyphosphate sulfate, they know that it translocates through the nervous system, from the macrophage and lymphocyte carried across the brain into the brain, causing all kinds of damage, including stress, anxiety, things like that. So, holy cow. Wow, right?
I really applaud acknowledging this, because it's a difficult space to go, because it jumps beyond the vaccine to a kind of messier space. But where this is absolutely important is to help governments. I mean, been in Japan almost every year, at least once, twice, 3 times a year, related to the situation there. And I can't tell you how many, Colombia, been back and forth with the Ministry of Health. The stress this causes on governments and programs when you have a lot of serious symptoms. And that's the other thing. These are physical symptoms. This is pain. This is eating disorders. This is a whole range of symptoms that are very real symptoms. They may not have been caused by the contents of vaccines. They could be attributable more to the vaccination experience. But
What a joke! These are very serious symptoms. These are life-altering symptoms. This is horrible stuff. But definitely not attributed to the ingredients of the vaccine, but just the experience of getting vaccinated and the fear that's been driven around that. And this is causing, more importantly, this is causing a very big stress on governments and the program. I applaud this because it helped divert away from the immunization itself, and now we call it a problem with the experience.
It affects the whole confidence in the system if governments don't know how to deal with all this. It gets particularly complicated when the court cases start coming, which has happened in all of these countries. But anyway, thank you, Gax. It's the biggest gift you could give, is helping on these guidance. I've read through a number of the drafts, and it's really important, valuable, trust-building, and helpful for governments to have some sense, and also for health workers,
some scapegoat,
to anticipate things like this in cases like when they are going to start, whether it's an HPV, and it's multiple vaccines, not just
it's
HPV.
Anything.
Then we have this other issue, which is when the signals are fabricated and yet still provoke panic.
So then she's going to say people are just making it up, right? She cites an incident in India where they're like, oh, this is making our kids pass out, and then the guy nudges the kids and they all fall down. And you know what? That probably was faked. But there are probably people trying to draw attention to the fact that you need to look at safety of vaccines. So then she goes into, well, what's the solution? Well, education camps, of course. Re-educating the public to downplay these rumors. Oh, that's just rumor. Those are anecdotal stories. That doesn't matter. You need to stick with our science. Don't be a science denier. You need to go back to an education camp and learn the truth. And then she dives into actually evaluating the impact of the vaccine risk awareness movement. It's a fast-moving landscape. Let's look.
Or locally specific reasons. We are in a dynamic, evolving system that is absolutely interacting and affecting each other. I'm working with physicists, modelers, big data. This is a physicist I'm working with at GW in George Washington University. Is actually an Oxford physicist. These are, he had worked primarily on different kinds of social networks, but I was fascinated by his methods, and I said, listen, you should look at the vaccine space. So each of these blobs, as he calls them, are communities, like a Facebook page, or Arnica, this group of mothers.
This is how they're tracking us.
The green dots are undecided, neutral communities, people interested in vaccines but asking questions. The red are the clearly questioning anti-communities, and the blue are the positive. Already you can see the blue
Pharma
is a tighter group,
doctors,
and the red
sheep,
more out there. Now, if you look at the numbers, what he was looking at was over a period of time, literally a couple months. What is the recruiting pace of the blue positive versus the red in them converting the undecided to their camp or the other.
Who's changing the green to red or blue? Who's doing it?
It was a
Tug of war.
500% faster recruitment by the negative than the positive
500%.
vaccine community.
500% faster recruitment to the risk awareness group versus what she calls the positive group. The negative group versus the positive group. No, these are critical thinkers that are looking at the ingredients, looking at the science as to what actually happens when you inject those ingredients and going, yep, nope, I'm out. I'm learning also that my innate immunity is wonderful and knows how to handle this, especially if I learn good nutrition and avoiding toxins and supporting my body naturally. Yep, I'm going to go with nature over these toxic, neurotoxic injections. My opinion, guys, we're hearing it directly from the World Health Organization still.
That's fast. And these are not,
Yeah.
This is not hypothetical. These are real communities. Every single dot there, I can go to their website and find them. So what he, excuse the military parallel, but he said the problem with the pro community is that you operate like a state army.
This is
You're
interesting.
quite rigid, you stay in your lines, you do your job, you're very efficient, but you have a formality about it that is totally disconnected from the population. Whereas the other side is operating like an insurgency, a guerrilla warfare, absolutely nimble, jumping on it, there, present, engaged.
We've got the tactics
We
to
wanna
take you
listen to
down.
I was listening
It's
to
called
Andrew
truth.
Wakefield the other day. I know, I'm not supposed to listen to him.
Okay, this is funny. Here she goes. I was listening to Andrew Wakefield the other day. I know. I'm not supposed to listen to that guy. But I did, and here's what I learned.
But if I don't listen to him, I'm the only one who's going to tell you about it. So I ended up listening on both sides. He is a perfect populist. He is out there for the public, and the reason he has such a following, and he has a big following, he says, mothers come first. Parents know best. It's absolutely what they want to hear. They'll forgive him for everything else because he said, I care about you.
Here's the reason why Andrew Wakefield is winning over us, because he's actually concerned about the individual and not about the program like we are. So people really resonate with that. He's a populist. What a master propagandist.
What your experience is matters. You're right. Maybe that symptom that you had they will find out that it actually is a real adverse event, and they just don't know it yet.
Your experience matters. You could be right. Science just hasn't caught up with that yet. Whoa, I can't believe people are buying into such statements.
That's the line, and that's what's keeping so many people engaged. Paul Slovak is a top risk analyst, scientist, and he has an excellent article on risk as feelings. And I think I like this framing because we're pretty good in the middle there on the logic, reasoning, and science. We're really not up to the plate on dealing with risk as feelings and risk as politics. And that's where we need to kind of complete the triangle, because if we don't engage on the emotions and the politics, we're not going to get out of the barn with our logic.
They're learning the game, right? So instinct and emotion, those are innate signals and warnings saying, not a good idea, guys, and we're starting to listen, right? And we're actually learning that we should. So they're trying to leverage that. And this is why they're developing these clinical surveys and things saying, what's going to get you to take the vaccine, right? Guilt, embarrassment, protecting others for the greater good. Just tell us what you need to hear and we'll tell you so that you'll do it. So this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to not just push logic and reason and bring in a little bit more of that instinct and emotion into their sales pitch. One
of the challenges, and I've had a few conversations with Walt about the letter following Wakefield's original article, but it's how...
All right, I've had enough of her. So let's hear what some others have to say. Let me just pull some other video up, and we'll look at what other people at this summit had to say about vaccine safety. That was really loud. We're going to get a little bit of her right in the beginning. But again, it's important to hear.
There's a lot of safety science that's needed. And without the good science, we can't have good communication. So although I'm talking...
Hold on. I thought the science was settled. What does she mean there's a lot of science that's needed? You mean it's not settled?
About all these other contextual issues and communication issues, it absolutely needs the science as the backbone. You can't repurpose the same old science to make it sound better if you don't have the science that's relevant to the new problems. So we need much more investment in safety science.
Dang right we do.
We cannot overemphasize the fact that we really don't have very good safety monitoring systems in many...
Nope, we don't have any good safety monitoring systems. In fact, it's all self-reporting. And then when somebody self-reports, you go, yeah, well, that's anecdotal because there's no science to back it up. So what good is the self-reporting anyway, if you're just going to deny anybody's self-report?
Many countries, and this adds to the miscommunication and the misapprehensions, because we're not able to give clear-cut answers when people ask questions about the deaths that have occurred due to particular vaccine, and this always gets blown up in the media.
No, it doesn't. It never gets reported. And if a death ever gets reported in the media, it's always, well, there's no connection. It's a coincidence.
Should be able to give a very factual account of what exactly has happened and what the cause of deaths are. But in most cases, there's some obfuscation at that level, and therefore there's less and less trust then in the system.
There's a ton of obfuscation when a death occurs post-vaccination. But if somebody dies from the virus, it was definitely the virus. Never obfuscation there.
Every time that there is an association, be it temporal or not temporal, the first accusation is it is the adjuvant. And yet without adjuvants, we are not going to have the next generation of vaccines. And many of the vaccines that we do have, ranging from tetanus through to HPV, require adjuvants in order for them to work.
Yep.
So the challenge that we have in front of us is how do we build confidence in this? And
again, there is a safety issue, and it typically comes back to the adjuvant. But we can't make a vaccine that's going to trigger a robust immune response without an adjuvant. So we know there's a safety problem. So what's the solution? We need to fix confidence in vaccines, not address the safety issue. We need to address the lack of confidence in vaccines because of these safety signals.
First of all, comes from the regulatory agencies, to Marianne. When we add an adjuvant, it's because it is essential. We do not add adjuvants to vaccines because we want to do so. But when we add them, it adds to the complexity. And I give courses every year on how do you develop vaccines, how do you make vaccines. And the first lesson is, while you're making your vaccine, if you can avoid using an adjuvant, please do so.
Good luck.
Lesson 2 is, if you're going to use an adjuvant, use one that has a history of safety.
None do. That history of safety was based on assumptions because we didn't know where to look. Now, science is becoming more and more clear that the adjuvants that we've been using are extremely dangerous, and they are working hard at trying to create others, and every one that they come up with is also extremely dangerous, including polyethylene glycol and these new nanoparticle lipid particles that encase, in this case, messaging signals or anything else. They all have consequences to them. Okay, so he's saying if there's any way to make a vaccine without an adjuvant, go for it, but good luck. And if you do, geez, try to go with the ones that have at least some history of safety, but we're learning that none really do.
And lesson 3 is, if you're not going to do that, think very carefully.
It
Think
seems to me that adjuvants multiply the immunogenicity of the antigens that they are added to, and that is their intention. It seems to me they multiply the reactogenicity in many instances, and therefore it seems to me that it is not unexpected if they multiply the incidence of adverse reactions that are associated with the antigen but may not have been detected through lack of statistical power in.
Bam. So the antigen is designed to increase the immunogenicity, and it's the adjuvant, right? The antigen isn't the threat. We're seeing increased adverse reactions because of the adjuvant.
Studies. You are correct. As we add adjuvants, especially some of the more recent adjuvants, such as the AS01 saponin-derived adjuvants, we do see increased local reactogenicity. The primary concern, though, usually is systemic adverse events rather than local adverse events. And we tend to get in the phase 2 and the phase 3 studies quite good data on the local reactogenicity. Those of us in this room that are beyond the age of 50 who've had the pleasure of having the recent shingles vaccine will know that this does have quite significant local reactogenicity. If you got the vaccine, you know that you got the vaccine.
Okay.
But this
Sounds
is not
like what's happening
the major
now.
health concern. The major health concern which we are seeing are accusations of long-term effects.
Now, we know that there are many, many long-term effects with all the vaccines on the childhood schedule that exist now and the adult schedule, because there is one. It's the new vaccines that are out there under emergency use authorization that we have no idea what long-term effects are, but we're seeing many, many, many acute reactions, which are going to be that locogenicity, inflammation and soreness, and we're seeing infection and signs of sickness, and people are getting better. And people are also having fatal reactions as well. That can't be downplayed. That's anecdotal. I'm not denying that that's anecdotal, but it happens, okay?
So to come back to this, I'm going to once again point to the regulators. It comes down to ensuring that we conduct the phase 2 and the phase 3 studies with adequate size and with appropriate measurement.
And that got thrown out the window as soon as emergency use authorization went through. On all the vaccines, the placebo group was thrown out, and the validity of phase 3 trial, it's garbage. It just is.
So in our clinical trials, we are actually using relatively small sample sizes. And when we do that, we're at risk of tyranny of small numbers, which is you just need a single case of Wegener's granulomatosis, and your vaccine has to solve Walt's. How do you prove a null hypothesis? And it takes years and years to try to figure that out. So it's a real conundrum, right? Getting the right size, dealing with the tyranny of small numbers, making sure that you can really do it. And so
it's really hard for us to get a vaccine trial large enough that we can bury the signals of harm. Sorry. Just my opinion.
I think one of the things that we really need to invest in are kind of better biomarkers, better mechanistic understanding of how these things work so we can better understand adverse events as they come up.
One of the additional issues that complicates safety evaluation is if you look at and you struggle with the length of follow-up that should be adequate in a, let's say, pre-licensure or even post-marketing study, if that's even possible. And again, as you mentioned, pre-licensure clinical trials may not be powered enough.
We know they're not. They go on for maybe days, sometimes months, and then we move on to post-marketing data, which is, again, self-reported and never gets actually onto the VAERS reports until recently when people started to pay attention to this. Less than 1% actually gets reported, so where are they getting their safety data? They're not. They just tell you, safe and effective.
The subject population that you administer the adjuvant to, because we've seen data presented to us where an adjuvant, a particular adjuvant added to a vaccine antigen did really nothing when administered to a certain population, and it's usually the elderly, compared to administering the same formulation to younger age strata. So these are things which need to be considered as well and further complicate safety and effectiveness evaluation of adjuvants combined with vaccine antigens.
I cast back my mind to our situation in Nigeria, where at 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 14 weeks, a child is being given different antigens from different companies. And these vaccines have different adjuvants, different preservatives, and so on. Something crosses my mind. Is there a possibility of these adjuvants, preservatives, cross-reacting amongst themselves?
What an important question. Gee, we study these vaccines individually, but on the vaccine schedule, especially these poor little babies, they're getting inoculated at 2 months, 4 months, 6 months with 5, 6, 7 different vaccines at once. Some have different adjuvants in them. Some have many different antigens in them. What about cross-reactivity? What's going on with that? How come so many kids are dying after those 2, 4, 6 month appointments? What is going on? Isn't this a big issue? This isn't me saying this, guys. This is the World Health Organization, the only people that can have an opinion on this. So, this better not get deleted.
Have there ever been a study on the possibility of cross-reactions from the panel members that you can share the experience with us?
Now, the only way to tease that out is if you had a large population database like the Vaccine Safety Data Link, as well as some of the other national databases that are coming to being, where the actual vaccine exposure is tracked down to that level of specificity of who is the manufacturer, what is the lot number, et cetera, et cetera. And there's initiative to try to make the vaccine label information barcoded so that it includes that level of information, so that in the future when we do these type of studies, we're able to tease that out. and in order as each time you subdivide, then the sample size gets becoming more and more challenging, and that's what I said earlier today about that we're really only in the beginning of the era of large data sets where hopefully we could start to harmonize the databases for multiple studies. And there's actually an initiative underway. Helen there may want to comment on it to try to get more national vaccine safety database linked together so we could start to answer these type of questions.
Many people have tried to get access to the vaccine safety database and have been denied to look at vaccine versus unvaccinated groups. Okay, why haven't we been tracking every lot number, every vaccination given, and tracking, doctor's appointments after that by this information for the past couple decades since we've had the technology? Because they don't want to look that closely at it.
That you just raised.
The other thing that's a trend and an issue is not just confidence in providers, but confidence of healthcare providers. We have a very wobbly health professional front line that is starting to question vaccines and the safety of vaccines. When the frontline professionals are starting to question, or they don't feel like they have enough confidence about the safety,
they don't know shit about them,
to stand up to it, to the person asking them the questions. I mean, most medical school curriculums, even nursing curriculums, in medical school, you're lucky if you have a half day on vaccines, never mind keeping up to date with all this.
All right, guys. So, honestly, if they're not going to allow me to share my own opinions and to share our anecdotal stories and to share other people's anecdotal stories and say, be careful of this signal of risk, then let's hear it from the World Health Organization themselves. And that's all I did here. I added some of my own opinions along the way, but we heard it from the horse's mouth. Okay? The World Health Organization, who is the ones that the social media, community guidelines are saying, you can't contradict them. I'm not. I'm playing what they're saying, and I'm telling you how I interpret what they're saying. Okay? And that's for everybody else to go and look at this information and interpret it for yourself. Again, you can go to the World Health Organization's website and watch the entire Vaccine Safety Summit. And you know what? You come to your own conclusions. Okay? But at least do your research. Those ingredients matter. Injection is extremely different than ingestion. And they're going to tell you, oh, aluminum's safe, it's in breast milk, it's in formula, it's, you cook with it, it's in baking powders, and aluminum is safe. No, it's not. Aluminum is causing so much systemic issues in our bodies, causing chronic illness, causing neurological decline, causing autoimmune disease. It serves no biological purpose, okay? And injecting it gives the body full access to that toxicity. And today's childhood schedule is extremely aggressive. Extremely aggressive. I've gone over this in past videos. My aluminum toxicity video goes over it in great detail. And if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend that you do. But if you don't want to hear it from me, hear it from experts like Dr. Russell Blaylock, Dr. Suzanne Humphreys, Dr. Chris Exley of Keele University, Dr. Christopher Shaw in British Columbia, Romain Girardi in France, and many others. Okay? You want to hear it from the specialists that look at the research on the compounds. Okay? These virologists and immunologists aren't looking at the chronic illness that's stemming from this. All they want to see is, are we getting an immune response? Yes, effective. Okay? So much to consider. But if social media doesn't want to allow us to have a free discussion about it and wants to say that only the World Health Organization can discuss these issues around safety, then that's what we just did. We just took a listen to what the World Health Organization has to say about vaccine safety, vaccine hesitancy, vaccine confidence, and the importance that their messaging focuses on increasing trust in the public and in the physicians, that we're all willing to take a certain amount of risk to do what they tell us to do. And if you're comfortable with that, then go ahead and go do it. I'm not. I'm going to listen to my body. I'm going to reconnect and realign with God and with nature and let both take its course. All right? You do you. I'll do me. The important part of all of this is that we have the freedom and the liberty to do what we feel is best for us and our children and our family members, and to speak freely and have these discussions. I'm not saying you have to agree with me. We can disagree. That's okay. But we should have the freedom to have this discussion. All right? Love you guys. Have a great day. Bye.